Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is The Take for Market Rebellion. And an interesting day yesterday. We talk about these choppy markets, and this entire week we have been extremely choppy. Now, we've had volatile markets, no doubt about it, but we have really been in this very choppy up and down movement within a couple hundred points. So, not nearly as volatile as we have been, but we are still seeing extremely choppy markets. Give you a great example. Yesterday in the pre-markets, the focus certainly was on the coronavirus and some of the spread of that and what the pressures were in the marketplace. That was in the very, very early in the pre-market and going into the start of the session. As a matter of fact, early on, we were off about 1% across all the major indices. Well, that was reversed, and that was reversed relatively quickly. And then by the time we get towards the end of the day in the final hour, the markets absolutely screamed to the upside, closing up. The Dow finished the day up over 300 points. The S&P added about 33. The NASDAQ was up over 100 points. So an extreme push to the upside and a big flip. A lot of that coming early in the session where we started to see that big turn. And a lot of that really connected with the financials. We started to see the financials start to make that move. Now, we knew about the stress tests and all the rest, but you take a look over at the financials, up about 2.5% yesterday. A nice, big, solid move to the upside and something we've been looking for. But can the financials put this together back-to-back days? That's been the issue. We have not seen participation from the financials back-to-back. We've seen some movement to the upside, and then, of course, we've seen plenty of moves back to the downside, and it's been sort of holding in this consolidated area now for a while. You take a look at the XLF. We talked about this yesterday, but take a look at the XLF. Between 23 and 24, and that's where we seem to find ourselves. Well, yesterday, Goldman Sachs was up 4.5%. JP Morgan added about 3.5%. You had PayPal, American Express, you get the idea, all of which were contributing to this nice move in the financials. But it wasn't just the financials. You had some participation from energy as well, especially in many of those beta names that we talk about all the time, where you're going to get far faster movement than in the big names. The Chevrons, the Exxons, yes, they were having a nice day as well. But you look at these names like National Oil Well Varco, you look at Noble, you look at Pioneer, those kind of names really were pushing, and the XLE did finish up about 2%. And lastly, biotech. Biotech really contributing once again to the market move to the upside. And many of those names just continue to hit. BioMarin, all these names across the board, and not necessarily names that are just in some way, shape, or form connected to COVID. These are just the biotech names in general. Take a look at the XBI and take a look at the IBB. You'll see what I'm talking about. There has been a nice move to the upside and pressing very close to some of those highs, in some cases all-time highs. So we did see a surge late in the day as well. When you look at the semiconductor space, look at a name like NVIDIA. This has been an area where we've seen mostly strength for a long period of time. Doesn't get talked about enough because of the focus on the Power 5. But take a look at a lot of these chip names, some of these semiconductor names. NVIDIA really has been one of those names, just continues to be a very powerful move to the upside. Now, we also talk about volatility index in this range where we have been sort of stuck between 31 and 36. Well, finished out yesterday around 32. And that really does fit well and gives you a great indicator of how much movement we are expecting each and every day. Because if you look at 32 on the VIX, that's telling you about a 2% move each and every day. Well, we're getting some pretty substantial moves. Now, yesterday we finished well over 1% to the upside across the major indices. And the fact that we were down where we were and then to move all the way back up. Look at that intraday movement. I talk about it all the time, but I think it's very, very important to be very conscious of not just the close to close, but a lot of that intraday movement that's participating as well. The one thing that was a little bit concerning, and I say a little bit concerning because we talk about this all the time as well, but the volume. Volume did slip back down towards 26 million yesterday. We continue to range around 32 million per day for the month of June. So significantly 6 million contracts less yesterday. That's something that sticks out a little bit. It's not overly something that I'm overly concerned about, but the fact, and here's why. The best year we've ever had, we averaged about 20 million contracts per day. So the fact that we slipped back to 26 million from these June numbers, not overly concerning, but something we're always kind of trying to keep an eye on. Now the banks, the stress tests, that's been something that really was talked about a lot yesterday, and for all the right reasons. And we got through those we've gotten some of the results, at least, about what folks are thinking. And restrictions on dividend payments, that's something. Restrictions on buybacks, that's also something that's a bit of a concern, it looks like, because if you take a look at where the leadership role is today, and we're looking at a market right now, I just took a glance over, down about 340 points. We were only down about 150 at the start of the day, and then we've just slowly been moving a little bit farther. Pre-markets, 150, 160, opening, still in those numbers, but then very quickly we were down about 250, and now we're looking at some numbers that look significantly lower than that. So down more than 1% today right now for sure on the markets. Financials, that is the area that is leading this downside. I talk about some of those restrictions. Those restrictions make people nervous. That nervousness causes people to say, look, I want to sell and some of these positions out, and you're seeing some selling pressure for sure today. Goldman Sachs, we talked about some of those gains yesterday. It's down over 5%. JP Morgan's down nearly 4%. American Express also getting hit to the downside, and energy. We talk about the price of oil, and we got up over 41, but we gave that back and we pulled back down into the upper 30s, 38, 39. But here we are once again. That's an area where we're seeing some pressure as well. Also, add into that, let's just touch right back on some of the earnings. One specifically, big name, Nike. Now, there was a lot of anticipation going into this Nike number, and a lot of those numbers had come down, and you look at where those numbers were. Their number that they reported absolutely shocked people, and it probably shouldn't have shocked people. Even though I was somewhat bearish on this, it shouldn't have been so shocking given the circumstances of what Nike's working through. Now, their online world for Nike e-commerce, extremely strong. That had great growth. But the problem was when you look at deeper in some of the bigger numbers, they really did miss by a significant amount. That's why that stock today is down about 4%. I'm looking at volatility. We're not getting a huge spike. Part of that is because here we are at Friday, so you got to price in the weekend. But volatility index still holding around, well, I'll tell you right now, it's holding right around 33. It's only up about a point today, so not that significant, but it is very accurate, I think, in terms of why it's trading where it is at 33, given the movement that we're seeing in the marketplace. And like I say, you do have to price in a little bit of that weekend as well. Hanes Brands. Talk about unusual option activity each and every day, and this is the one that I do not see this name very often. So when I do, it's kind of fun to highlight something that's unusual on the unusual option activity. The unusual today, Hanes Brands. Don't see it very often. Stock's trading about 1080. We're seeing some pretty interesting buying here. We're seeing buyers of 2,000 of the August 12 calls. Those are going to go for about 80 cents. Now, the interesting thing here is, and I like when I see this, very disciplined trader, they're actually capping a bit of the upside. So in other words, saying, hey, look, we think there is upside here, but we don't think it's going to absolutely explode to the upside. So they're willing to give some of that upside away. So they're buying the August 12s, selling the August 14s. That way there's less money on the table. Obviously that cuts back if the stock were to run and sprint to the upside, but that caps out at around 14 plus the premium. So they're paying about 80 cents for these options. That's great. And selling those August 14 calls for about 30 cents. 2,000 of these trading, not huge, but it's something that does stand out. And these are just out of the money calls. Stocks trading underneath 11. These are the 12 strike calls. They do have earnings on July 30th. So that's something to keep in mind as well. These are August calls. So that is a little further out than most of what we have been seeing, where we see so much short-term option activity. We talk about 1 week out, or this coming Friday, or 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out. But these are actually going out to August and do encompass this earnings as well. Folks, have a great day of trading. As I say all the time, definitely get educated. This is where the growth is. This is the place to be. The derivatives markets. We have some of the best educators in the business. Enjoy your weekend. Have a great day of trading.